better value on dental implants. You won't. That's Dedicated Dental, 573-1900.
Eye-level outdoor advertising with market-wide coverage. Reach a moving target. The streets of Tucson are full of potential customers. Stretch your ad dollars with AdVision Outdoor and capture their attention with an ad display or ad bench. AdVision Outdoor, 292-6200.
Can you tell me the name of one of the most distinctive resorts in Tucson that offers a variety of suites and rooms, providing guests with spectacular scenic views of the desert as well as the mountains? Any ideas? Well, here's a hint. Amazing cuisine and beautiful horses. That's right, you guessed it, Tanque Verde Ranch. Come make some cool memories. Visit TanqueVerdeRanch.com for questions on accommodations, dude ranch activities, and restaurant hours. TanqueVerdeRanch.com.
Proud member of the Tucson Originals.
Can you tell me the name of one of the most distinctive resorts in Tucson that offers a variety of suites and rooms, providing guests with spectacular scenic views of the desert as well as the mountains? Any ideas? Well, here's a hint. Amazing cuisine and beautiful horses. That's right, you guessed it, Tanque Verde Ranch. Come make some cool memories. Visit TanqueVerdeRanch.com for questions on accommodations, dude ranch activities, and restaurant hours. TanqueVerdeRanch.com.
Proud member of the Tucson Originals.
Do you ever think, hey, I really miss predictable talk hosts who say the same partisan nonsense every day?
Blah, blah, blah. Blah, 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 blah.
We didn't think so. The power to think for yourself.
Folks, welcome inside the Parisi Palace, high above 2919 East Broadway. This is a special edition of the Jake Feinberg Show, coming to you live on Power Talk. Please go to powertalk.live, download the free app. Everyone's got a smartphone these days, and stream all of our live local programming, including the Jake Feinberg Show, because you get to hear interviews with my next guest, who continues to be a prolific lover and giver of in humanity at a time of craven activity all over the world. It's lucky to have cats who got the memo about being real human beings. Gifted bass player Stanley Clarke, welcome back to the Jake Feinberg Show.
How you doing, Jake?
How are you, brother?
I'm good, man. I'm driving through this mountain. I hope it doesn't cut out at all, but
it's okay.
I'm pretty much through it. I'm getting into it. I'm coming out of it, so I hope it's clear.
I think we'll be all right. I wanted to ask you, Stanley, what makes you feel so good about always opening doors and helping younger cats try to succeed?
Well, the main reason is, I think in almost all societies there's a sort of a for lack of better words, like a process of elders passing things down to young people. And, the first point in life where a person realizes that is when he's a child or he's a father or a mother. If you're a child, your mother and father, they pass things down to you. You, Jake, you're who you are in part because of your parents or whoever, were your parenting individuals that were around you. And if you have kids, they are who they are in part because of what you or your parents, you or your wife or have done. So it's a very natural thing. I find it very kind of strange, when I come across musicians that don't, make any effort to give anything to anyone. Anything. I've run across guys like that. I normally don't play with those type of guys, and I don't associate with those types. But just to just directly answer your question, it's a very natural thing. Maybe I do it a little more organized than others. I have a foundation. We give out scholarships every year, and then I do other things like I give master classes, and I have lots of students when I'm at home for long periods of time. I still teach bass. I really enjoy teaching bass. These days, I particularly like teaching electric bass players that want to transition to acoustic bass.
You know, I think the other thing that is like, your foundation, I think a lot of people also, a lot of higher profile artists, they put money towards things they believe in, but I feel like you're also like on the ground in a very hands-on kind of fashion, which is refreshing. But I mean, can you talk about an elder outside of your mother? I know your mother was extremely influential, but you came from Philadelphia, which was just this bastion of activity. Can you talk about an elder passing down to you something, and it was very inspiring to you to get to the point where you are now doing that the same way?
I had I think, outside of my mother, I would have to say I had an uncle. I knew him as Uncle Richard. And Uncle Richard was an interesting guy. He was a heavy-duty military guy. I think every time I saw him, he had on a military outfit, I used to wonder, as kids, we used to wonder whether he would sleep. He was just so... he was a very interesting guy because he really talked a lot about discipline, and he was all his communications were like very sharp, like an arrow, very precise. For some reason, I did that because, it was different than a lot of the other people I was around at that point.
Can you give an example of one? Can you give an example of one of these arrows that he shot at you?
I remember he was talking to me one time about putting on my clothes. Make sure your buttons are straight and your shoes are tied. Like very little things like that are very impressionable to someone who is 11 or 12 years old. And it's just the way he said it. He's a very, very kind person, but very, very straight, And then actually, after that, I met a few, there were a few other people in my life, but really, some of the guys that actually really stick out in my mind was some of the old jazz greats that I first played with, like Horace Silver basically gave me the whole construct of how you run a band. Horace could have wrote books about that stuff. I mean, he was so straight and hardcore with how he ran his bands. It was very even down to his music. I mean, his handwriting was so it was as if it came out of a computer. When you read his charts. The only other person, Chick Corea became that. Early on, Chick wasn't like that, but and Chick was a great fan of Horace Silver. We actually talk about doing an album, me and Chick, of all Horace's music. But Horace Silver was very he was very straight with me. I remember one time I was playing somewhere in California. I think we were playing the old Red Fox Club. This was I'm not sure, late 60s, maybe it was probably early 70s. And I remember it was a Tuesday night, and he had this song called, what was it called? Tokyo Blues or something.
Sure, yeah.
I remember it was C minor, and it had this bass line that doom, doom, dee, doom, doom, dee, doom, doom, just over and over and over. And me being a wild kid from Philadelphia, I wanted to get away from that. So I was playing all kinds of other notes, wrong notes, just crazy stuff. And I remember, the gig ended, and Horace came to my hotel room the next day, and he says, with that, he has a really, easy sounding voice. He says, well, Stanley, how you doing? You like the hotel? And, yeah, I like the hotel. So he says, listen, some of those songs, you're playing the wrong notes. He says, now, it's Tuesday now, and if you don't have those things together by Thursday or maybe Friday, Saturday, you will be back in Philadelphia.
Wow.
I remember that, man.
I love it.
Yeah.
So
but
it was.
I learned a lesson.
Yeah.
and I practiced playing these three notes, C, G, C, G, C, G, because it was a mental. I practiced it just so I could mentally do it. It's not that I couldn't do it technically. It's just I had a sort of an adverse mental, thought about these things. Like, so I really learned control, discipline, and following orders. A lot of the great studio musicians, and I surely did my share in New York. One of the things you have to really have under your belt is a high degree of duplication and understanding what someone's saying to you. Like, I want you to play this, and like sometimes the mind plays funny tricks. I may say this, but you may think that. And the real solid professional musician that usually has a long career in music has to have a high degree of duplication, like understanding what someone wants. And then later, when you have your own band, you can appreciate that. And when you pick musicians in your band, you hope and expect a person to be able to duplicate what the hell you're talking about, because it's really the only way for music to go forward in that kind of scenario. There are other bands where it's more of like when people are playing together for a long time, like what we had with Return to Forever, where it was a little more democratic. Like a song would come in, but it was really more about what you wanted to do as opposed to what the writer wanted to do. So it was nice. Horace Silver, I learned a lot from Blakey as well.
Well, Stanley, we're talking to Stanley Clarke here on the Jake Feinberg Show as he drives through the Canyon Mountains. Stanley, I was approached by a wonderful film producer to do a documentary on Stan Getz. And I wanted to talk to you about, I find it to be an interesting thing because I want to know how you guys wound up being the rhythm section for Stan Getz, Chick and Tony and you.
I think, that was basically Stan had hired Chick. And he said, listen, I want to have a great band. And so Chick, said, okay, you need to get this guy, Stanley Clarke, and I think I can get Tony Williams. And then early on, we had Ayrton Moreira, the Brazilian percussionist. And so it all fell together, and we all played with Stan, and, we used to wear tuxedos, and I really enjoyed playing with Stan. He was really a kind person, he was very easy to work with, and he was a great musician, tremendous improviser. The thing I liked about Stan was he could play on anything. I mean, even music that, might have not, let's say rhythmically, might not have been what he was used to doing, but right. He had such an ability to play. He understood harmony and improvisation really well, and so he could play on top of anything. He was one of those guys. I think sometimes he doesn't get the credit that he deserves because he was a very popular musician. He had those big hits with Girl from Ipanema, Desperado, the stuff he did with Suaves Alberto. But believe me, I played with Stan. He could play anything. He was a bebopper all the way, 100%.
Stan, I got to ask you, was there like a rehearsal where you had to go to Shadowbrook up to the mansion to play?
Say that again? I
mean, when Chick called you and said, hey, you want to play with Stan Getz, did you guys go and rehearse at his mansion in New York at all, in Shadowbrook? Can you talk about that?
Yeah. Well, it's funny, after playing with Horace Silver, I never really did any sort of auditions, but But I remember we went to this huge mansion. I think he was married to this woman, and and she had this. I think she was like had something to do with some royalty or something in one of these countries. I don't know. And we went there. I was very young, and we went there to play, and it was great. It was very. Very, very easy. I mean, matter of fact, the whole band was very. I was like 18 or 19 years old, not really fully developed as a player like I would have hoped to be, and I think that's true with all guys that are 18 or 19. And you're thrown in these kind of situations. But me and Chick were just like two brothers, and Stan Getz was really kind, and Tony Williams really helped me a lot. Tony used to tell me, give me like pointers based on his experience with Ron Carter. Because Ron Carter was like hands down for me, pound for pound, the greatest bass player ever in my book.
Yeah.
So I would listen to Tony Williams, and Tony would say, Ron would do this like this, and Ron would do it. And I remember the best thing that Tony ever said was Ron was like the tree in the Miles Davis band. He was, you might think it was Herbie Hancock or this person, but the guy that really held everything together was Ron Carter. And when I go back and listen to those records, I hear it, because he was like a tree, like an oak. He just didn't move. And so I kind of based my style on that. I thought this, and Tony was saying, do that, be that way, like be. And basically, he was saying, be strong. And that was a very cool thing. And you don't usually hear that from other people. Be strong. You have to be pretty confident yourself to tell another person that you're working with to be strong. In many ways, be stronger than me.
I dig.
Pretty damn confident.
No, I mean, this is so fascinating because, do you remember that original engagement at the Rainbow Room with Stan? Was Airto on drums at some point? Go ahead.
No. Airto, on that gig, he played percussion, and Tony played drum. Have you ever seen? There's a picture of us at the Rainbow Room. There's a really kind of a famous picture that floats around with us at the Rainbow Room. I mean, we look like something out of the 20s or something, because we got these bow ties on, but then you look at Airto and you say, well, wait a minute, like somebody didn't know. They look at the picture. What is this guy, an Indian or something? He's got this long hair, and we're all looking very. Could have been in the 20s, 30s, 40s, whatever, But what gives it away is Airto, and now that was a great gig, because that was one of those high society jazz gigs. I mean, Stan, maybe only a few others would have a chance to play at the Rainbow Room there, and it was good. It was all the high society. I think some people from the Kennedy family were there. I forget who, and just all these sort of real highbrow, Upper East Side, New York type of people were there, and it was cool. It was cool. I just remember those damn tuxedos. It was really hard playing in those tuxedos.
Was that? Was that because it was like a upper crust kind of gig, or Stan wanted you guys?
Yeah. That was it. I mean, it was a gig that was probably a throwback to the 40s, and and the 50s, like Duke Ellington, all those guys came in and played in tuxedos. I mean, that was very common. I was actually happy that I did it, because there's a few things I've done in jazz music that I'm really proud of for the oddest reasons. Like, one is that because I got a chance to play with Stan Getz playing in a situation that you could trace back 20 years before that gig. You know, like to wear a tuxedo at a gig. I mean, that's, you know, that's back there. And the other thing was playing with Art Blakey and the Jazz Messengers. You know, like that's like all the guys that have played with Art Blakey. There's kind of a brotherhood, like, because only a few guys in jazz have been a part of the Jazz Messengers. And Art, even though he was crazy as hell, he really learned so much, because his book, the music that he did, was so well put together. Those songs were so great, and Art was like a tremendous swing. He really understood. You know, I mean, if you play with Art Blakey and you didn't, and you can't figure out what jazz is after that, then, you know, you should really try another business there, because, you know, Art was like a 100% jazz musician. He was like a jazz ambassador. He actually taught me how to swing. He taught me how, when you look at a beat, you land the note on the beat. There's 3 position points. You can go before the beat, right on the beat, or right after the beat. And he explained to me, like, how some players play on top of the beat, so they're before the beat. Like Tony Williams is like that. And when I used to play with Tony, Chick is like that too. We play on top of the beat, so everything always sounds like, not like we're speeding up, but there's a real energy about it. And then there's guys that play dead right on the beat, dead right on it, boom, and that's another kind of feel. And then there's the guys that play behind the beat, like, say, Lester Young, some of the older guys. You know, Stan Getz actually plays, when he plays ballads, he's like way back. Frank Sinatra sings way back. You know, it's almost like he's dragging, and then he catches up by the end of the lyric, if you really study the way he sang, and many other singers too. And so Art was a guy that taught me that. And then what I realized, like maybe, I don't know, 5-6 years after that, is I recognized that I was being taught a language by all these guys. There's a language of jazz. It isn't just going to Berkeley, learning giant steps, coming out, and then you're a jazz musician. You know, you play a few clubs. No, there's an actual language that, if you're lucky enough to get around someone that has that language, and then you're fortunate enough to have that person pass it down to you. There's things, you know, there's like things that drummers do, that bass players do, that piano players do, that enhance the music and make it really special. And it has nothing to do with how fast you play, or how much technique you have, or how much technique you don't have, or even your compositions. It's the language, you know, and it's to me, that's the essence of jazz music. You know, I mean, jazz is, I think I've told you this before, I mentioned this to you, that jazz is a very undefined term. But if I had to define it in a dictionary, not only would I include the element of improvisation, which is the one common denominator that goes through all jazz, but I would also have to include this language and some information in text about this particular language. And I was fortunate that I got it from I played with a lot of those old. I spent a day with Dexter Gordon one time. It's a record that I can't even listen to it. I sound so bad on that record. now probably I'm mentioning it. Now everyone's going to go out and check it out. But I was like so young, but yeah. I learned so much playing with Dexter Gordon. I think it was Louis Hayes, Thad Jones played trumpet, and then the great Hank Jones on the piano. You know, they didn't have charts. I remember we were playing Aragon, the Sonny Rollins tune,
sure,
and no chart. They just figured, man, you're supposed to know this. And I'm like, oh, shit. So Hank Jones said, "Come on over here, stand next to me." He really, and there's another great example of passing something down.
Exactly.
And what he did was pass down the idea of love and help. And like, okay, young kid, I'm going to help you, you know, and I will never forget him for that. That was the greatest thing he ever did for me, you know. So yeah, so that was that.
Can you when you and Chick joined the band with Stan, you were doing 500 Miles High, stuff that Return to Forever was doing. Was he able to pick up on that very easily because he was a total card-carrying bebopper?
You know, I lost that question. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'm getting some feedback from you here. But no, my question was, you know, you incorporated some Return to Forever music with Stan.
Yeah.
500 Miles High. And I'm just curious if he was able to adapt to that because, as you said before, he was a card-carrying bebopper. I mean, I really want to talk. I really believe that a lot of cats now start at Kind of Blue. They think that that's where you start, when in reality you have to go much farther back. And I just, like you were talking about the Tuxedos, but I'm even talking.
Yeah.
I'm even talking about the Brazil. I know Stan did all the bossa stuff with Astrud and Joa, but it's like you were doing a whole new language, but you guys were all rooted in bebop. I mean, that to me, is that the reason he was able to fit in so well with what you guys were doing?
Well, you know, it was, it's funny, I don't hear this talked about much, but it was very commonplace for that people were trying to push the music forward. You know, like it's one thing to be rooted in something.
Right.
Okay, you know, you're rooted in something, and that's great. But the type of musicians, like you look at, not just Chick, look at Herbie Hancock, Wayne Shorter, all these different, Joe Henderson. I mean, it was very commonplace, and it was maybe unspoken to push the music forward. But to answer your question, well, I think I'm answering your question, is the roots are always there, because even when we played with Return to Forever later, and it's funny, Stan used to always say, and he was serious about it, that he was the guy that created Return to Forever, because you know, because he thought that he brought me and Chick together. He thought Chick like looked my name up in a phone book or something somewhere. He didn't know that we had this relationship. Because, you know, me and Chick had played with Joe Henderson before that. Me and Chick go way back.
Sure.
So, but you know those roots and those traditions, particularly the ones of improvisation, understanding the language, using language, like the way Chick, accompanies a soloist, was kind of unheard of in progressive rock or whatever we were part of at that time. I mean, we brought those elements to that music, and even to Stan. It was something that was new, and Stan was interested in pushing stuff forward. I think I'm kind of biased in the sense that I'm saying usually the music that gets pushed forward is, for some reason, for the most part, it stems from the rhythm section. You know, like even if you look at Miles, the album Bitches Brew, when you really listen to it, if you could take Miles out, you know, it's you know, those guys that were in the rhythm section, you know, Jack DeJohnette on drums, Lenny White, I believe Tony played on a track, Chick, Herbie, Keith Jarrett, John McLaughlin, Michael Henderson, and the same way with all the other records that everyone else did. It's really it was kind of a group effort, a group postulate, to okay, we have this music here, we're rooted, this is what it is, but we're moving it forward. That was a great period, man. Late 60s, 70s, all up through the 70s. I mean, that's really what it was everyone was pushing it forward, and at the same time trying to maintain some kind of, I don't know, soberness in the music, so you wouldn't get fired, or people would recognize something that you're doing. But it was a great time. I see bits of that right now with people. I see people like Kamasi Washington. I see a few others here and there. Some of the young guys that are interested in going forward, and I mean, it's for the health of the music and for the longevity of it, and for it to continue, you have to have that there, because societies change and music has to change, and in many ways, some of the great societies are created by the artists. Whether it's literature, painting, music, will pretty much dictate how people dress, what people talk about, what they're thinking about. I mean, it's a pretty interesting thing to be a part of.
Well, Stanley, I wanted to ask you one question about your musical production in movies. I saw that YouTube link, and I wanted to ask you, what is the hardest? I mean, you painted a very kind of nice picture of the whole process. It was very smooth. If you have a budget, what was the hardest part? What is the hardest part of being a musical producer for film?
I don't know why. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I'm getting bounced back when I talk to you. You didn't hear me?
Yeah. If you could just, I don't know why it's so. Just let me have that one more time.
No problem. What is the hardest thing about being a music producer for film?
Okay, what's the most important thing about being a film composer?
Well, you painted a very positive picture of the whole process in that YouTube clip.
Oh, well.
And I want to know the hardest. I want to know the hardest thing, the hardest part the hardest.
The hardest part. I don't say this to be funny or anything, but the hardest part about being a film composer is very similar to being an actor. Is that you have to get the gig. It's like it's kind of like the meeting. Because what happens is, like actors, film composers, we lose more jobs than we get. Like, say, if you're a film composer and you're up for 15 films for that year, so you may have 15 meetings, but maybe you'll just get one or two of them. And if they're big films, that's probably all you can do that year is 2 films, because it's a lot of work. And the main thing is when you meet a director or a producer, somehow, it's you almost have to, after reading the script, it's kind of part of your meeting is like a pitch. You're pitching your ideas, like, well, I think we should do this. I think we should do that. But also, there's a social skill set that has to be there. It's like, this director realizes that he's going to be talking to you for the next 2 or 3 months, possibly every day. So he has to know that he can talk to you, that you can understand him and that he can understand you, and then beyond that you can understand his picture and what he's doing. Because usually, like music, directors, particularly if they're writer-directors, maybe the guy will write something down. You'll read a page on a script, but there's probably a subtext there. You see this, but he wants the audience to think that, and so it's important that a composer has the ability to look beyond the obvious and really try to understand what the guy wants, and then show that you have the ability to translate that, in music, and say once you're hired, then it's really you want to enhance the film. Like I think where a lot of film composers go wrong, or guys that really never become film composers, is if you think that it's all about the music, like, oh, I'm going to make this great music and it's going to be the greatest thing ever, more than likely you're going to get fired and never called again by anybody, because it's really, the music is it's pretty much secondary, or maybe another way to put it, it's part of the composite. You have a film, you have, like, it's funny, the other night I went to this event. It was the 40th year anniversary of Boys in the Hood. And I really like that film a lot because, for a number of reasons, because it gave America a glimpse into the hood or urban areas, what, young African American males were, doing, from all angles. Bad guys, good guys, guys that are just innocent bystanders, parents, the education. John did a really good job of putting all that in, an hour and something, And I remember when I was doing the music for John, John was very young, a young director, but he was very intuitive, and he was able, he said, listen, Stanley, I want this film to be timeless. And so I want those instruments that, that make films timeless. And I said, so you want an orchestra. You don't just want hip-hop music and beats and things like that. You want music to enhance the emotion. He says, yeah. And so, that's what we did. And it was really, I was listening to it we were watching it at the Academy, because we had all the actors and the post-production people all came back, and I was just amazed. It really did that, and it that's why the film is an iconic film, and it'll be around forever. And it's really something.
I mean, you've had a lot of experience with, in TV and film. I'm just curious, did you get off on guys like Dave Grusin and Roger Kellaway and the way they went about it? I'm just trying to figure out who you really looked up, who you thought were kind of progressive before you got into.
Well, surely those guys that you mentioned. I mean, Roger Kellaway, Dave Grusin. I mean, Dave Grusin brought something. He really brought jazz language harmonically to films. I mean, beautiful, like, harmonics, the way he arranges things. I really appreciated that. I would say that, the king, though, of the film composers is John Williams,
Sure.
For a number of reasons. He was the best paid one. I think he got $1 million a film or something like that. And he was just like, he kind of set the bar, He really, all those films. I mean, he's done so many films, but there's so many other guys too, Like one of my favorite film scores of all times is, and I always forget the film, the composer. Well, there's two of them. There's a film called Cinema Paradiso. That's a film that's, whenever my son, my son has finally landed a nice girl, but when he was younger, I used to say, why don't you go rent this film, and you guys watch this film. And she'll be asking you, what does it mean? What does it mean? And you just say, just check it out. This is a beautiful film. The score is exquisite, pristine. It's called Cinema Paradiso. And then the other one that I really, really like is the score in the movie Spartacus. and it has the most beautiful score and theme, because it's like very much like The Godfather, which came later. It's one of those kind of themes that the theme works anywhere. Like in The Godfather, that da 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 da. Like somebody could be killed, they could be eating, they could be, walking down the street, whatever. The theme was so thematic and so rich that you could place it anywhere in the movie, and you would get more understanding there of what was happening. So, those films, those writers that did that stuff, and then there's some TV writers, that I really respect, because I've done my share of television movies.
Yeah, Tales from the Crypt. That stuff was. I love that. I encourage anybody to go check out the Stanley Clarke film, music for film. It was interesting the way it was put together. Some of your anecdotes were hysterical. I really got off on that, man. Just one final question for you, and maybe we can pick this up later. But if you can put into perspective, Stan was a pop star. He was a white man who was a pop star in America. And you mentioned before that maybe he was sort of not given as much credit because of that, for being a really in the pocket, hard swinging dude. Can you talk about, from your perspective? There were cats like Clarke Terry who thought he was a racist jive dude, but I just wanted to know from you.
Clarke thought that Stan was a racist?
Yeah, absolutely. He wanted nothing to do with him. But
you know what? Yeah. Racism in jazz music. There's. Go ahead. Finish your question.
Well, no. You can go off on that too. It's just, and that was told. But I just wanted you to kind of put in perspective, sort of. Because even I talked to the skipper, Henry Franklin, and he said, and I love Henry, but he goes, I was a Coltrane guy. And it almost felt like I just wanted you to put in perspective, knowing that you had a chance to play with him, his legacy and why, and maybe what he deserves to be credited for that he never got credit for whatever reason.
Yeah. Well, okay. Well, the first thing I got to say is that, it's obvious there. Racism is a part of the fabric in this country. However great, however small it is something that I feel that some people pull out when they shouldn't, and then sometimes it should be pulled out the card, and it's not. It's another like undefined term, like racism. Like a guy can get in an elevator and with a black kid, he could be with four businessmen that are white guys, and he could feel uncomfortable and say, these motherfuckers are racist.
Right.
That's very possible, and maybe they are. But, for me, when it comes to music and musicians, I think that there's less of that in there. I do think that there are some people that benefit because of their race, and it goes both sides. I'm positive there are some of the. I remember back in the 70s and particularly in the 80s. If you were like a white pop artist, there were certain advantages and opportunities that were there for that person that weren't there for, say, if you were a funk artist. Like, for instance, MTV. I think there's a great interview with David Bowie where he lays it right out with those guys. They were early MTV. It was horrible what they did. They didn't play like, bands like Earth, Wind and Fire that sold more records than 90% of the people that were played on MTV. And the reason that they weren't played was because, the music wouldn't fit or something like that. But then along came Michael Jackson with Thriller, and there's an inside story. I don't want to misquote or give any wrong information, but let's just say that MTV was told, if you don't play this, you're not going to get that. And so they played Michael Jackson, and of course it changed music, it changed the world, and people were, like, geez, who's that? All that stuff happens. I mean, getting back to Stan Getz, I mean, and I love the skipper too, Henry Franklin. I love people that say I'm this kind of guy, I'm a Coltrane guy. I mean, like me, I'm a Coltrane guy.
Sure.
But because I'm a Coltrane guy doesn't mean that I'm going to nullify or diminish someone else's ability. Stan Getz was a great bebop saxophone player, and period. And I remember one time hearing Ron Carter speak on Stan. Ron had the biggest respect for Stan Getz as a musician. If Stan did anything that you could put under the category of being a racist or something, I mean, I never saw it. He was always really kind to me. I mean, I have so many stories with Stan that some cannot be aired.
Well, no, I mean, I guess here's the thing. I'm going to be, I'm going to be out in Los Angeles with this film producer, and if you're available, I would love to come capture a couple of these stories that you can talk about on camera, because this is going to be. I really have loved grooving with you on the radio, but I'd love to meet with you in person, and I realize that I've already done a lot of wood shit. I mean, I've already uncovered. I talked to Billy Hart. I mean, I've talked to. I'm going to talk to Jack DeJohnette about Getz, but I'll be out in a couple weeks, so I'm going to talk to George, and hopefully we can link that up, because I want to keep grooving on this, because I know that Getz. I think there was some kind of like insecurity in the sense that he was a great player, but some of the cats wanted to making sure that jazz is an African art form, so they were on the train side,
Yeah, I mean, it must be, it's just one of those things, we human beings, we tend to put a lot of importance on our differences. I do it, and we all do it at certain times, and it's just something that maybe one of these days, thousands of years from now, we'll all figure it out, but I like that. The shortest Maya Angelou poem it's really short, and it says, she goes, we're more alike than unalike. That's one of my favorite, Maya Angelou poems, and it just, I loved working with Stan. It was great, and he was always cool to me. I was cool to him, and he was, that guy could play. Period.
Yeah, and I'm just trying to figure out what I know that you and Lenny go way back, but I'm just curious if Tony Williams. Yeah. I'm just curious if Tony Williams ever was considered for Return to Forever. But I know he was a leader in his own right at that point.
No. Lenny was. Tony was never considered. The only other drummer that was considered for Return to Forever and actually did a few gigs. We did a record that never came out. That was Steve Gadd.
You told me that last time. That blew people away, man. I thought that.
That was it. He was, we did. I'd say we played maybe 20 gigs.
You cut a record.
The album, The Hymn of the Seventh Galaxy, was recorded. The full album with Stevie Gadd, and for some reason we don't know where the tapes are. We don't know what.
Gosh.
But then Stevie had to go somewhere or whatever, and then I told Chick about Lenny, and Chick had known Lenny, but I said, man, why don't you hire Lenny? And then Lenny came into the band, and then we recorded the thing again. Maybe the stuff that we did with Stevie, because maybe we didn't finish the record. Maybe we just did one song. I don't know. But I do remember he played the Hymn of the Seventh Galaxy, that song. And when he came along, it was right after the Light as a Feather period, because we would do Spain, we'd do all those tunes, 500 Miles High, and we had a conga player with us. And we hired Billy Connors, And it's funny, we had gotten Billy Connors, and Lenny helped us get Billy Connors, but then Lenny went off with this band called Azteca,
Right.
and that's why we had Stevie Gadd. And then Stevie had to go. Lenny, and I said, "Come on, man, you need to leave Azteca and come over here." so just leave those guys, man. You're not Indian. Forget it. Come on,
You're not Latino. I love. Well, I mean, the whole thing is it was one of the most, for me, not even being alive, but just looking at that time period, studying it so vigorously. It was everybody was. I think that's the thing, though. I mean, I think that it's imperative, and that's why I love talking to you, man, because it's just what you do. It's true to yourself. You give back, and the cats that don't give, more cats have to give back, because the lineage of the music, the younger cats need to know that they need to go farther back in order to move forward. That's just my feeling. So
exactly right. And you know something, I just kind of a light went off in my head.
Yeah.
I just recognize. Well, I've known this for a while, but there is no real documentation about that period, like pre Bitches Brew, going through Bitches Brew into the fusion.
Yep.
You know, those powerhouse bands like Return of Forever, Mahavishnu Orchestra, Weather Report, Herbie Hancock's band, and a few others. There's nothing really documented. I was hoping that Wynton Marsalis would have taken the opportunity to talk about those bands, but he didn't choose to do that on that jazz thing that he did with Ken Burns. I was very disappointed about that, because it was very. And it's funny, Lenny White, his dream is to do a movie, a documentary about that. I'm telling you, Jake, if you should talk to Lenny.
No, listen, Stanley. I'm marinating. No, because we started with Horace Silver and we'll end with Horace Silver, but the truth is that this is where I've been marinating for 5 years. I have endless content. I think it's. I mean, you had the most. It was the most elastic period in music, and it needs to be documented, because you're bringing in you're bringing in rock cats, you're bringing in jazz, you're bringing in everything, and the old school guard was still alive, and the touring circuit was still vibrant. And I mean, even so, I still can't quite figure out the chronology. I'm gonna have to go back, but it's like you come back from Japan, you're playing the Keystone Corner, somehow you're playing with Getz at this. I mean, the whole thing, it was like, I can't even imagine where your head was at that time. With time perspective, it was the most vibrant live music experience of all time. It was incredible. So I'll talk to Lenny about it. But listen, I'll reach out to George, but I'd love to connect with you in a week or so and do some stuff on film.
Well,
man.
here's the deal. All July I'm going to be in Europe, so we might not. I'll be back from Europe on the 23rd of July. So if you're out here somewhere after that, that's fine. If not, I'm shooting around different places around the country. Let's see, you're in Arizona, right?
Yeah, I need you to come to Tucson, man. Come down to play. Come down and play with Natasha or something. Yeah.
I have one of my boyhood friends who's a doctor. He has a practice out there that's close to. How close is Tucson? Let's see, Tucson is how many miles from Phoenix?
Yeah, I mean it's an hour and 20 minutes. It's a cakewalk. I'll come up there.
Great,
I'll come up
great.
there.
So I go to see him, and I'm due to go to see him. And so when I do that, we'll stay in touch.
Definitely.
I'll come by, and I'll see you.
All right, brother, man. Yeah, listen, much love to you, man. Keep doing what you're doing, man.
All right, man. Cool.
Peace.
Take care.
All right, man.
All right.
Later.
All right.
And that's a wrap for the Jake Feinberg Show. Thanks to Jackson Kraft for coming in. We wish him all the best on his test, big test tomorrow. Thanks to Jim Parisi on Power Talk for letting us spread the word and continue to expand consciousness. That's a wrap. This is the Jake Feinberg Show. We'll see you in a bit.